A lot of people are considering entrepreneurship because they want status, not because they're actually entrepreneurs.
James Currier is a 5-time founder and angel investor in DoorDash, Lyft, Penryn, and a founding partner of NFX, one of the most active venture capital in the US, focused on seed and pre-seed startups.
I was really an entrepreneur from the time I was born. When I was 6, I started selling worms, and then I was selling seeds, and then I was selling shellfish, and then I started a t-shirt company, and I started a boxer short company. I started 18 companies before I was 18. I was struggling between the fear of having no money and the fear of living a boring life. Don't become an entrepreneur if, one, you haven't been an entrepreneur since you were 6 or 12, and it's just part of your DNA, or you have an idea in your head that you can't not do.
What do you think makes a really good founder? And if somebody's like debating, should I be an entrepreneur, should I not be, what would you tell them?
Here's my advice to your crowd.
James, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I love it. Let's take you back in time. Let's rewind. And you studied in Princeton and Harvard. And I'm sure a lot of people in that area took kind of the traditional path, right? Consulting, finance, all the accolades. Why did you decide to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So it's interesting. In a way, I didn't decide. And in fact, I gave evidence that when I was 6, I started selling worms, and then I was selling seeds, and then I was selling shellfish, and then I started a t-shirt company, and I started a boxer short company. And I started 18 companies before I was 18. It was a way of making money. My dad was an entrepreneur. My mom was a music teacher. We lived out in New Hampshire. And if I wanted money, I needed to start businesses. And so I did that. And then when I was in college, I started the Loft agency, and I was doing all sorts of different, and I took a year off and started a company, and then went back and finished up at Princeton and whatnot. So I was really an entrepreneur from the time I was born. I grew up in a place where you had to be an entrepreneur, sort of in rural New Hampshire. And so it was chosen for me. What was sad was that at Princeton, they didn't have anyone to sort of slap me in the face and say, dude, you're an entrepreneur. Get out to California, get out to San Francisco where the entrepreneurs are. It took me 10 years from graduating from college to actually getting out here and realizing, these are my people. This is where I was supposed to be the whole time. And I just hadn't known. And so, right after school, I went into the normal path. I applied for an associate position at GTE, which was now part of Verizon. It was a 180,000 person company with a big headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut. And I traveled up there with my little coat and tie on the train and got a job. And, they gave me 6 different jobs over 3 years. So I learned all about the corporation and all the people. And then I was just like, this is not for me. And a friend of mine had reminded me that my dream had been to go to Asia. So he called me up one day. He had just gotten back. And I went to my boss. I'm like, I got to go to Asia. So I sailed. I took a sailboat and I sailed to Tahiti. And then I flew on to Asia. And I got a job at Star TV because they were doing technology and media and whatnot. Then I got fired from there and I went to Beijing and I was studying Mandarin. And then I got misdiagnosed with a heart disease and sent home.
Wait. How old are you at this point?
24.
Wow. Okay. So first of all, are you afraid at any point, or you're just kind of eating the dream? Where does it catch you?
I think what was happening was this might be interesting to your audience, which is I was struggling between the fear of having no money and the fear of living a boring life.
Right.
And I was grinding up toward the realization that I was more scared of living a boring life than I was of not having any money or anything to eat.
That's incredible. And that's exactly our audience, by the way. Every single listener here is right now getting a aha moment.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I felt like I want to live an amazing life and I'm willing to die for that.
Wow.
And so when I got back to Boston, I went and took a job at a venture capital firm. And then I learned all about venture capital and how that all works. I was smiling and dialing, trying to sell money for battery ventures. And then they came to my room and said, here's your recommendation to Harvard Business School. Go to Harvard Business School. They had all been to Harvard Business School. So I applied and I got in because, they said I should. And I had done all the things. And then I got in and I went to that. But that, again, wasn't quite the thing. That again, this was the normal track. This was
Right.
safety. This was the fear that I grew up with of not having enough to eat. And by the time I was done with HBS, I felt like I had turned over enough rocks. I knew that I could always get a job for $60,000 somewhere because I had this HBS degree. And then I had to decide, do I go back into venture capital or do I become a startup founder? And this guy named Mike Zach at CRV, Charles River Ventures, he said to me, I'm listening to you here at dinner. It's our 6th meeting. We're ready to make you an offer, but I can see that you need to be an entrepreneur and you need to go do that. You'll be a better venture capitalist later once you've done that. And he was the one who finally slapped me in the face and said, dude, you're an entrepreneur. And
Wow.
I was 31 at the time. And
Well, I would also say, James, I don't know. I mean, the word entrepreneur didn't even exist at that point, right? I mean, it was just like it was a different time. Am I
the
wrong?
word entrepreneur existed, but the word startup did not.
Hmm.
The word startup really didn't come until 1999, 2000, and then really took off in 2004. But you're right. We did have the word entrepreneurship.
I don't know if that exists all the way to Israel. I think it didn't catch the boat.
Oh, okay. That's fair
At
enough.
least not in my English vocabulary, but I don't know.
That's fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
interesting.
Yeah, and so that's when I started my first startup, and then we almost went out of business twice. And
Wait. So let's go there. So he gives you this like aha moment.
Yeah.
And you're saying, okay, maybe this is what I need to do. But between that and actually knowing what to start is a very different story.
Right. So here's the thing. Here's my advice to your crowd is don't become an entrepreneur. If not, one, you haven't been an entrepreneur since you were 6 or 12, and it's just part of your DNA.
Right.
Or you have an idea in your head that you can't not do.
Right.
And both things were true for me at that time. I had been a little entrepreneur since I was 6, and I had an idea I couldn't not do. I couldn't sleep. I was so excited about it. I was having visions about it. It filled my soul, and so I had to do it. And Mike Zach thankfully saw that, and he said to me, "You need to go do this."
And I'll tap into that. And I want the listeners to listen in because don't go there just because you think it's easier than finding a job. Go there because it's a passion. Entrepreneurship, as far as I'm concerned, James, correct me if I'm wrong, it's always going to be hard. But if it's your passion, it's going to be the thing that you have to do.
That's exactly right. I mean, especially if you're going to raise venture capital, which most companies shouldn't, but if you are, it's a prison.
Yeah.
It's a prison.
Yeah.
You have to exit that company and give the investors their money back. And so the clock, you're just in the prison. You've got a sentence until you exit. And it feels like
it's a different kind of prison. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's very tough. And there are many nights where you're just not sleeping and you're totally suffering. And you have to remind yourself, I chose this. And my wife would remind me, and I would remind me, and it was still very, very hard that, look, I chose this, because it's very painful.
So let's go there for a second, James, because I agree with you 1,000%. With Leap Academy, I decided not to raise capital and not to have the prison. But I still want to go there for a second. So you have this idea. It's keeping you up at night. You're like, oh my God, is that Tickle that you need to start?
Tickle, yeah.
Okay. So you know that you need to create it.
The basic idea was that the internet was going to be about us and our friends, not about Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise, because all the other media technologies were meant for one to many. Radio, one broadcast, 100,000 listeners. Television, same thing. Magazines, same thing. The internet was the first technology, media technology, that was many to many. And so I realized it's going to be about us. We're going to consume media about us. And that's
brilliant.
That's the
and
thing
that's really early on.
That was like 98, 99.
99, yeah. So that's before most of us understood what to do with internet, except for some emails. I think Silicon Valley already understood that there's a lot. But I think for me, like we were in Intel and we could see, but it wasn't that vision. Like the vision wasn't that there. So it's incredible. So you had this idea, you're jumping all in, you decide that you're going despite fear, despite money, despite it all. Was there fear? Like, am I crazy?
No, there was just, I had been at a venture firm, so I had seen how you fund these things, and I had seen many people take this leap and live this life, and I had interviewed hundreds and hundreds of founders who were living this life. So for me, I was already acclimated to the cold water.
Okay. So, okay, but then the .com brought very, very cold water. How did you do with the 2000s? Because that couldn't.
We were 80% lucky and 20% good. The 80% luck was that we raised our Series A round
Before.
1 week before the crash. Excuse me, during the crash. The crash started on a Monday. We got the money on a Friday afternoon that same week. The venture
Oh my
capitalist
God.
actually sent the check.
Wow.
And so we were very, very lucky. And so by the time we could even gear up to spend any of the money, it was very clear what had already happened.
Wow.
And so we didn't overspend. So we were able to extend long enough to survive. But the 20% where we were good was that we iterated really quickly. We were one of the first companies to do A/B testing, and we took ourselves off salary for about 6 months leading up to
Wow.
the financing. So we had 13 people, and I think 7 of us were on salary and 6 of us were off. And we were working 12 hours a day and iterating and testing and trying and breaking old paradigms and throwing out old stuff until finally something hit enough. And the other part that we were good at was I talked to 43 venture capitalists before we got funded. And
Wow.
remember, these are all my friends. These are people I had known for years working in the industry. And they all said no to me.
And I want to go there, James, for a second, because I think one of the things that I hear very, very often is like, but I tried. And what they mean is that they went to 7 and they got rejection. I'm like, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
look at my spreadsheet for the podcast. Do you know how many, how many thousands said no initially until I got, a few big names? Like that is it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. And I think for people who have succeeded at school and for people who've succeeded in large corporations or succeeded in government or succeeded in the military, it's hard to imagine how many at-bats you need to get one hit, how many ideas you need to have before you have one good idea. And it's just a benchmarking exercise. And so for people who are saying, I'm not the right height, I'm not the right color, I'm not the right gender, I'm not the right nationality, therefore I'm not getting funded. You know what?
You
That's
just didn't
mostly
try
bullshit.
enough.
That's mostly bullshit, because the white guy from New England who went to Princeton and Harvard, who knew everybody in the industry, had everyone say no
Still
to him
got.
too, because it was not a consensus idea. It was not an easily digestible idea, and I had no traction yet.
And at
so,
that point, were you so like you had so much conviction in the idea that you just continued, or was there what the heck am I doing?
No, I just continued. I knew this was coming. I knew I just had to figure it out, and I just needed enough time to figure it out.
And at that point, are you in a relationship or not yet?
I had a girlfriend at the time. And
okay. And she's not slapping you and saying, James, get a job?
No, not at all. Not at all. She was fantastic. I stopped sleeping on October 3rd, and we raised money on April 9th, I think, something like that. So on October 3rd, I woke up in a cold sweat, realizing I didn't know what I was doing, that I was going to have to go off salary, that I was leading these 13 or 14 people into the abyss, that it wasn't, I hadn't learned nearly enough working at the venture from watching people do this. I needed to know much more about product and all that stuff. And so I just grinded. And my girlfriend, who's now my wife, she couldn't care less about money. She couldn't care less about technology. And so for her, she just cared that I wasn't sleeping. And she was like, well, if you're happy not sleeping and being stressed all the time, then that's you being happy. Fine.
Which sometimes we do take it on the spouses for my poor husband, but I have to say he has so much patience. But okay, so at some point you're starting to see like these seeds of viral loops that are happening, and you're starting to understand like this network effect, that thing that is happening. Can you explain a little more what just happened?
Yeah. So there's a difference between viral effects and network effects.
Right.
Viral effects are to get new free users. Network effects are to have retention, where the network effects create so much value in the product to people that they never want to leave, and no competitor can get them to leave. Okay, two totally different things. But and there's an article on nfx.com, which everybody should read, called "Viral Effects Are Not Network Effects." So what was happening at this time was that we had a massive viral effect, meaning we sent out our latest iteration of the product to 400 people on an email. And within 8 days, 1 million people were trying to hit the website and it crashed the website.
Wow.
So it was a luckily, it was a very
Very
clear
viral.
signal.
Right.
Had it not been clear, that would have been harder. A clear signal is a 0 or 100. But if you get like a 43 or a 37, that's the worst. Because
Right.
if it's a 0, you just move on to the next experiment.
Right.
And if it's 100,
The
you know you hit
maybe.
something.
The maybes are the hardest. Yes.
The maybes are the hardest. And so luckily it was a big viral effect. We started getting millions of people hitting the website. It was basically, we put up a dog test. Which breed of dog are you? Answer these 16 questions and we will give you this beautiful, cute little dog type with 4 paragraphs about who you are as a personality. And this went crazy. And
I love it.
I think in the end we had 100 million people take that test. So
Oh my God.
it took us like 4 hours to make. It was like another experiment. We just kept experimenting.
Right.
And then we were able to raise the money.
Wow.
And we didn't understand network effects. This was the big aha. Network effects didn't come until 2004. So we took off in February 2000, and then we didn't really understand network effects until 2004, and that's a whole different story.
Right, because then you need to also monetize and make it sustainable, right? I assume.
Right.
So tell us about that, because
you
that's
need
hard.
retention. So what we were in, we were building self-assessment tests, and so you had to put out a new self-assessment test every week. And this is the business of fresh produce. It's like being an e-commerce vendor or something like that, where you are always, or your job, you have to put out a new podcast. Right. This is what we call the business of fresh produce. And it's a manufacturing line. And it's a business, but it's a hard business. But it was working for us because a lot of people were coming. And so we could just put up ads and we could get, we got profitable for 1 month. And then we moved out to San Francisco because I couldn't hire anyone in Boston. We started this in Boston. Wow. And we just couldn't hire anybody who knew anything about anything. And so we had to move out here for hiring. And so of the 14 people, 13 of them moved. The 14th person who did not move is a woman named Mel Schneeberger, who changed her name to her husband's name, Mel Robbins, and she's now the #1 female podcaster in the world.
That's really cool.
Right? She was the one who didn't move with us. Anyway, she kept iterating too, and now she is where she is. So wow. She's fantastic. And so we moved out to California. We got an office, and then the fresh produce kind of started running out. There was no network effect. There's no retention. People would come, they would enjoy, they would send to their friends, we would get new users, and then everyone would kind of leave. The internet only had 600 million people at the time. We registered 150 million of them.
That's incredible.
But they would only come and stay for 1 or 2 or 3 hours, and then they would leave. So then we're like, okay, let's build out a matchmaking site where at least people will come and stay for 3, 4, 5 months. Okay, now let's build out a social network. And there was no name social network for what we called it a member directory, where people could see each other and comment and share and that kind of thing. And then we built out an ad network, which was like a marketplace, which had a network effect. But we still didn't understand what we were doing. We got up to about 30, 40 million of revenue. And then, there was a moment when we were running out of money again, and we were 60 days away. So the first time we literally got the money on a Friday, we would have missed payroll for the final 7 people on Monday.
Wow.
So we were 48 hours away from running out of money. And then we were 60 days away later, and we saw another website that was non-competitive with us doing something, and we just copied their feature onto our website, and we made $88,000 in 1 month, which doubled the revenue of the business, and we got profitable, and we never looked back. And then we were profitable every month for 36 months. And we got up to about 32, 40 million in there. And then Monster.com offered to buy us out. Right. And we sold to them.
For about 100 million, right?
For 110 million. It was 90, amazing. But with the earnout, it ended up being 110. And because we did really well after the acquisition. And it was 5 years to the week since we started the company. So we went through the downturn, came out the upturn, and then we sold at that time. And when we get, so here's a story about network effects. So we get to Monster, horribly run company. management doesn't know what they're doing. There's bureaucracy. They have 600 people building the monster.com website, which we could do with 3 or 4 people. Like it was a mess. And I was like, why are they worth 7 billion buying me for 100 when our team is better, our products are better, et cetera? And I was like, oh, they got a network effect back in 1997, 98, where the employers and the employees are all coming to their marketplace. And so nobody can really leave. And so nobody can really compete with them. And that's why they're worth 7 billion, is they had this network effect. And that's 2004 is when I fell in love with network effects. And I really started to understand, if I'm going to do anything going forward, I got to have a network effect, because I do not want to be in the fresh produce business.
Ooh, that is powerful, because you're bringing this back to every single one of your ventures and now to NFX, which is really fascinating.
Right. NFX is the name of our venture firm. It stands for network effects.
Of course. And we will talk about that. So after that, you, for some reason, not going on the beach and I don't know, and having fun, you decide to start more ventures. First of all, why?
I think
explain that.
Because I never did it for the money. And this is the big reason why 90% of the exits in technology come out of the Bay Area, is because the culture here doesn't care about the money.
Right.
The culture here cares about ego, cares about impact, cares about changing the world, cares about basically being a graffiti artist. Like you go out with a graffiti and you paint your tag, and then as you go by on the subway, you see your tag on that wall. We're graffiti artists out here. And so once you do one graffiti art, you want to do more graffiti art.
I never thought of myself as a graffiti artist, but okay, I'll take that, James. That is awesome.
So that mindset means that once you get money, what do you do with it? You use it to build more things.
More stuff. I know.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to explain it to my husband, because he prefers to bike in Europe and he still doesn't get it. But I will try the graffiti thing. So tell me, so you found then Wonderhill in 2008.
So what we did was we decided that at Tickle, we had built a testing business and a matchmaking business and a social networking business and an ad tech business. And we had 7 different P&Ls inside of Tickle as we were doing consumer stuff. So we were like, let's just build that endemically into it. Let's create an incubator. Let's get 30, 40, 50 people in here. We'll work on 3 or 4 products at the same time. Most of them won't work. That's okay. We'll just iterate. We will iterate faster and cheaper than anybody else towards successes. And when something takes on, we'll jump on it. And so we were able to build, like if you look at venture-backed companies at that time doing other consumer things, like where we were able to build things 10 times faster and 10 times cheaper. We actually measured it, like how much venture capital did those 6 companies take, how much did we spend? So they would spend 6 million each, we'd spend 600K, 1/10. And they would take like 4 years to go through it, we would take 4 months. Like it was literally a 1 to 10 ratio in terms of figuring stuff out inside the incubator. The problem was, once you get a hit and something's working, the only person capable of running that business is you, because you're the one who came up with it. You can't like install a CEO or, co-do it with someone, which is why incubator models don't work. There's a soul to these things. Now, it can work a little bit with spreadsheet businesses like HIMS and Rocket Internet, I think has Alonda. But in general, these incubators do not work unless they're spreadsheet businesses where anybody can run it. Somebody from BCG can just buy traffic, sell traffic, that sort of thing. But if the business has any amount of soul in it, incubators don't work.
Interesting. Okay.
And so we tried it for 3 years. And during that time, we built 24 different products. We ended up venture backing 3 businesses. But I ended up being CEO of each one in turn. And so it wasn't really an incubator. It was just a way of finding the next business that I was going to run. And so that's what we did next. And the first business that came out of that was a gaming company called Wonderhill, which had started as something different. And then it pivoted into gaming. And then we merged that with Kabam, another gaming company. And then we took the growth analytics engine from that and spun it into a company called Iron Pearl. And then PayPal bought that. And then we started an enterprise HR software company for benefits called Jiff. And this was the biggest mistake of my career, because I was really good at consumer stuff and I wanted to sort of cure American healthcare with basically bringing Facebook platform, but making it for health and then letting all the apps sit on top of it. That was the idea. It's still a good
Right.
idea and still
It
hasn't
still
been
makes
done
sense. Right. It still makes sense. But why was it such a mistake? Because I heard you say that before. Take me there for a second.
because healthcare does not want to be cured.
Mm-hmm.
The American healthcare system is so frozen
So
and locked.
broken.
It's so locked in bad behavior. Everyone in the system is behaving badly. The doctors are behaving badly. They don't really care about patient health. They care about
Ouch.
revenue. The patients are
Ouch.
behaving badly. They just overconsume healthcare all the time, particularly as we age in the United
Mm.
States. It's like entertainment, right?
Oh my God,
The
that's
insurance
horrible.
companies, they just increase their
Horrible.
prices all the time. They're just rapacious. They're not actually trying to lower costs or improve. They say
No.
they are, but they're not. They don't behave that way. The pharma companies are just the people at the pharma companies work from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. They just use their IP to just milk money out of the system. They're unbelievably profitable. It's just nobody is behaving well, and it's hard to get anybody to try to behave well. And the only way you can help is make someone more money, not save cost, not improve
Right.
care. The only thing that the system responds to is making more money. And we were trying to improve care and reduce costs, and the system does not want that.
Nobody wants that. So take me there for a second, James, because you have tried for a while. Like you did basically put your head down and try to make it work. So take me there though for a second, because you're starting this thing and you're probably just getting like bashed by in all directions. Take me there a little bit.
Well, so we were, in the end, I did hire a person who knew the healthcare sector because it took me about 7 or 8 years to understand a bunch about the healthcare sector. It is very deep. It is very complicated. There's a whole set of new terminology you got to work on. And so I just didn't know what I was doing. I came in naive, and the healthcare system just spits up naive people like me. And I had already had 3 successes, but I was not naive about how you finance things or how you hire people or how you build good product, but I was naive about how
Right.
the healthcare system worked. And we weren't getting bashed around, we were just getting ignored. Nobody cared.
Mm.
So for the first 3 years, we were just ignored. It was very hard to fundraise, and it was very hard to get pilots. And so we ground it out, and we actually built the product. And then suddenly, one person liked it, and then 3, and then 10. And we were then on the stage, and we were the hot thing for about 6 to 8 months. And I was like, my God, we waited them out. It took 3.5 years, but we are the hot thing. Everyone's talking about this new hub strategy. Every self-insured employer needs to bring on one of these big pieces of software that we've built to manage all of their employees' healthcare. And this is awesome. And then in the end, what happened was we had 9 salespeople and we had all this pipeline. And the consultants who consult to the self-insured employers in the United States, there's 3 of them: Towers Watson, Aon Hewitt, and Mercer.
Right.
One of them had even invested $4.5 million in us. One of the people in their organization told other software companies, this is what's selling. This is what everyone wants. You should sell this. Here's Jiff's deck. Because if you have the same product Jiff does, then I can make money by running RFPs against all 4 of you. But if Jiff is the only source of this, then I don't make any money because they just buy you. And so for those people in those organizations to make their living, they needed to create competition and create fear and uncertainty and doubt in their customer's mind so that they would continue to need the consultant. And if the hub strategy had gotten implemented, no one would have needed Towers Watson because all the data would have been right there. They could have added something or removed an app at a click of a button. No contracts needed. It would all just been electronic. All the data would have been there. We would have de-siloed the information. Everyone would know what was working. And so to protect their business, they ultimately ensured that the hub strategy has not been implemented. And the 4 companies that then raised between $150 and $300 million each to compete with us and then started giving out the same deck, none of those have done very well. Because the system itself is resisting improving. It resists change because it reduces costs. It improves quality of care, and nobody wants that.
And I'm sure, like, again, the fact that you had to go through the various ventures, this, in this one, like, I'm sure that just makes you understand founders at a whole different level. But when you decide, I mean, you did sell this out, but you do look at it as a huge, I think, waste of time.
We
But
raised 68 million and sold it for 144 to a public company, and it was a massive waste of time when I could have been doing something much better with my time to make the world a better place or put more graffiti on the wall. For sure.
so when you sell Jiff, does it make you just kind of decide, I'm done? Or, I mean, again, the graffiti thing just makes you now decide to start NFX, because I feel like that should also be like traumatic to some extent. Like, I can't do this alone.
It was traumatic. And, I had put in millions of dollars myself to get Jiff going. That's how we survived the first 3 years.
Wow.
And so when we sold for 144, I barely got back what I had put in. And, I'd spent months not sleeping over Jiff as well. So,
Right.
a lot of heartbreak, no reward, a lot of risk, and no impact on the American healthcare system either. So a lose, lose, lose. And so what we had decided in 2010, so this was all taking place around 2000, I don't know, 16, 17. We had decided in 2010 that we were going to do a network effect venture firm. And the model for that was an accelerator. The more companies you have in the class, the more alumni you have, the more leads you have, the more your brand gets out there, people are loyal to it, blah, blah. Venture firms don't have network effects, but accelerators do. So we started as an accelerator in 2015 and did it for 2.5 years. And in 2017, we decided that we weren't going to continue with that model, but we were just going to become a venture firm. So at the beginning of this podcast, you said we were an accelerator. We're not. And we haven't been for 7 years. We are a venture firm. And we invest an average of $3 million for an average of 18% of a company. We're very hands-on. We try to help them if they want. If they want us to leave us alone, then we're also completely leaving you alone. But we have been in your shoes multiple times. And so that's what we're doing with NFX. And we've made over 200 investments now. And
incredible.
Going very well. One of the biggest seed funds in the world. I think us and First Round are probably the biggest. And it's going very well. But it's the sense of the PTSD of being a player. It's much better being a coach when you're my age and you have all this PTSD, right? So you got to move from being a player to being. I'm like Steve Kerr. I want to be like Steve Kerr, who played for the Bulls and won championships, but now he's winning championships, coaching the Golden State Warriors.
So tell me, James, so you decide to start NFX, and it's true. I probably knew it from the Startup Accelerator moment of it, but it moved from there. So,
it's been 8 years.
Forgive me.
It's hard to break. Well, Amazon is still booked, I understand, but
sorry about that. So tell me, James, first of all, how did you meet Gigi, by the way, Gigi Levy?
So I was living in Switzerland for a year and a half, having an adventure year with my kids. And my wife, and I was looking for companies in Switzerland to coach, and I couldn't find any. And so I decided to go to Israel looking for some, because we knew that Israel was just this awesome place to find startups. And I emailed 4 people, and I said, who should I meet with when I go to Israel? And all 4 listed Gigi Levy-Weiss on their list.
Wow.
And so I called up, I emailed Gigi, and the guy's got 3 kids, and he's like the biggest investor, and he's everywhere. He's like, I can meet with you at 9 p.m. on a Wednesday night. I have an hour-long slot. I was like, that would be fantastic. I'll take it. So I meet him on a Wednesday night at 9 p.m. and we're still sitting there talking at 3 a.m. We were sat there for 6 hours. And we talked about Ender's Game and about Star Wars and about all the things you're not supposed to talk about, like religion and politics and money and all the things that, you're not allowed to talk about. And he and I just talked about all those things. We had the best time. And so,
well, that Israelis don't have these walls of things that you can't talk about. That, right?
Not all of them.
Maybe.
Some have the walls, but not Gigi, with me at least. Right. And so we just got to be good friends. And then he and my co-founder for all of my companies, a guy named Stan Chudnovsky, who's here in the Bay Area. Yeah. He had also met Gigi like a year earlier at some event and in England or something. And so when Gigi came to the Bay Area to have dinner with us, he's like, "Hey, I want to have dinner with you guys." So we're sitting down, and he's like, and Stan and I had been looking for a third person to start this NFX thing with.
Wow.
And Gigi came to dinner, and he said, and I don't know, Stan and I had talked to, I don't know, 60 people, and said no to everybody. We just couldn't find the right vibe. We couldn't find the right
Right.
soul, the right spirit. You know what I'm talking about? Because it's not
Oh, yeah.
about
I mean, it's
skill
almost
and
like marriage. I mean, that's not easy to find.
it's marriage. And he said, "Well, if you guys are still going to do this NFX thing, I would do it with you." And so Stan and I just glanced at each other and were like, "Let's do it." And
Ah!
we thought we would love to have a foot in Israel. I had never been. No, that's not true. I had been once to go visit Gigi, and then twice
Right.
I went to a Buddhist retreat at En-Gedi, and
Really?
that was really awesome.
A
And
random.
so I'd been twice before, but we wanted a foothold in Israel. We thought it was
Right.
awesome and a great ecosystem, but it was mostly about spirit and soul. It was about karma, and
And this is around what, 2016,
this
17?
is 2000, and this is December 2014. Yeah,
14. Okay. Wow. Okay.
and
That's
then we
amazing.
started up in June of 2015. Yeah,
Amazing. So you're starting NFX. Starting a VC fund is even harder than I think a startup to raise the
so
capital.
we had a bunch of capital ourselves, right? Because we had all built and
Right.
sold businesses
A
successfully.
lot of businesses.
A lot of businesses. So we had plenty of capital ourselves to use. And, it's better to use your own and screw yourself than to screw somebody else while you're learning. So, and then we had a bunch of venture firms who wanted our deal flow. And so they put in a little bit of money into our fund as well. Greylock, CRV, Shasta, and
Right.
Mayfield. Great funds, great guys. And they had known us for years and invested in our companies and been successful and whatnot, and supported us in this. But again, it's the vibe. It's like, do you trust the person? Do you love the person? Do you believe in the person?
Right.
And we just got that community together, and then we got going. And then when we went out to raise a bigger venture fund, of the first fund was 150 million. Pete Flint had joined us, and Pete
Wow.
had built and sold Trulia for 3.5 billion. And so between the three of us, we had built and sold 10 companies worth over 10 billion. And that's twice as much as in Horowitz and Andreessen when they started that fund. So
Amazing.
the fundraising wasn't too difficult.
That's incredible. But let me ask you something, and I'm curious what you're going to say. I mean, clearly NFX has done really well, and you have some really amazing companies under your belt. But one of the things that I'm curious about, being an operator or even a CEO of a company is very different than gauging if something will be good for investment. And I almost feel like sometimes it's almost opposite because we tend to be very optimistic. At least I am. So I suck at an investment. I just invest with others because I'm too optimistic and I love the founders and I just want to say yes to everybody. So James, how do you bridge that gap and learn to be a really good, solid investor?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it's the constant battle. It's the daily constant battle between negativity and positivity. So I originally never wanted to be a venture capitalist because I'd worked at Battery Ventures, and Battery is a negative investing firm, which is why I think the returns are the highest and most consistent of almost any venture firm in the world. They will only invest when they can't not invest. They will only invest when they've gone down all the risks and checked them all off, and there's no reason not to exist. Oh, fuck, we have to, excuse my language. Oh, crap, we have to, we have to invest. We don't have any excuses not to.
Right.
And that's just a very negative process, and it makes you very negative as a person. And that's not a great way to live. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you have firms like Benchmark, where they're constantly thinking, how big could this be? How could this be massive? How could we look at our optimism and see what's going here?
Right.
And I hadn't realized that there was that type of more optimistic investing. And that's why I never wanted to be a VC. And but now we are bringing that sort of optimistic, almost naive approach to the investing, which doesn't work very well at Series B, but it kind of has to work at pre-seed and seed where we operate because there's not much to go on.
There's not much data.
There's not much data. And you have to think about what can go right. Because in the end, what matters to the venture capital fund and what matters to your life and your ability to paint graffiti on the wall is the big outcomes. Right. The big outcomes. Like I will be associated with my Poshmark investment and with my
Right.
DoorDash investment and my Lyft investment, because those got big. You know, you won't associate with my Wrap Leaf investment, even though I made 35 times on that. Or maybe you'll associate with my Goodreads investment, or not really with my Flickr investment, because they weren't massive. And so in the end, this is a power law business, as everybody says, but you have to understand you're really looking for the big outcomes. So at seed, you have to just be optimistic. And you have to be realistic. You have to have looked at hundreds of thousands of plans. You have to have invested in hundreds of companies and failed with most of them. You had to have a few successes where you see the patterns of success. And then you try to throw that all in and not get too negative all day long and not too cynical, and keep swinging and just keep swinging. And you know, our first fund at 37 investments, second fund at 55, third fund at about 80. So we're taking a lot of swings per fund, looking for the 3 or 4 that are going to be worth $2, $4, $5 billion. Right. And that's where we make our returns. That's where we have the most fun in terms of returns. But, you know, in the end, that's how you balance that negativity and positivity.
That is such a great answer. So first of all, thank you for sharing that, because I think, you know, that's the piece that is always kind of interesting for me to see. But then one of the, you know, like when there's ups and downs for founders, like I feel like one of the big things that investors are looking at is what, you know, yes, you want the big thing, but you also want to know that the first time there's a dip and that near death experience, they're not just going to throw, right? I mean, they're not just going to give up. Is there a way to ask? Is there a way to see if they're gonna just give up?
No, we were just talking about this last week. Again, it's one of the more difficult judgments to make about a founder. Are they smart? Are they fast? These are easier things to figure out in interviews. Are they ambitious? You know, we have a list of 48 attributes we're looking for, and most of them are not easy, but you can figure it out in 3 or 4 or 5 meetings and looking at their track record and seeing how they respond to emails and seeing how the people around them behave and etc. There's lots of tip-offs. But this issue about will they sell out when someone offers them $80 million for their company, which matters not to our venture fund. Even at 400 million, it's really not that interesting. If you exit for 400 million, it's like, it's fine for our venture fund, but it's not going to really move the needle. You've got to get to 2 billion for it to move. It's a crazy business model. I mean, the venture capital model it's kind of crazy. That's why I say most businesses shouldn't raise venture capital, because most businesses don't have a shot to be 2 to 4 to $10 billion company. But this is one of the hardest things to suss out. And what I will tell you is that one of the big things you can suss out is geography. So if someone is in San Francisco and they get offered $400 million, the guy that they were sitting next to at the soccer game sold his company for $2 billion, or just raised at $4 billion. For 400 seems like a loss. If that person is in Toronto, they're going to be the king of Toronto for the next 20 years. And so someone's willingness to keep going and their craziness to keep going is influenced by how crazy the people around them.
That's true.
And Europeans are really reasonable people. And most people are really reasonable. It's the crazy ones that are kind of out here, which is why most of the big exits are in the Bay Area, and increasingly why they're in Israel, because there's enough crazy people in Israel that are now there so that the people who are trying to decide if they're crazy or not can be influenced toward the crazy end of the spectrum, which is what we as venture capitalists want, and which I think is the most fun in the end.
So I love that. And I think, you know, I definitely heard some of the criteria that that is important for you guys in NFX. I would love for my listeners to also hear. I know speed and ambition are really big ones. But I would love the listeners to hear a little bit, like, what do you think makes a really good founder? And if somebody's like debating, should I be an entrepreneur? Should I not be? What would you tell them?
If you have a question, you shouldn't be.
Right. That's a good answer.
If there's a question, if you're worried about it or wondering about it, you know, just live your life. Just take your job, enjoy your days. Like most entrepreneurs are not going to affect the world. And if you're working in a big company, you will not affect the world. That's fine. Most of us won't affect the world. There's just a few people who will. So just enjoy your personality, and enjoy your family, and enjoy your community, and don't stress about it. Look, what happened was in 1994, before we had the browser, entrepreneurship was not high status. The people who would come into Battery and pitch us, they had maxed out 16 credit cards, they had a mortgage, and they were already doing 3 million of revenue. And they were hoping for 2 million of investment for us, and we could buy like 30% of the company. They had dandruff on their jacket, they had bad glasses, they had like a $90, suit on. These were autistic people mostly. These were people who couldn't work anywhere else. They were being driven into being entrepreneurs. They were very awkward, most of them. That is not the case anymore, because being an entrepreneur became high status.
Right. It became the cool thing to do.
Right. And so a lot of people are considering entrepreneurship because they want status, not because they're actually entrepreneurs. They want to be successful entrepreneurs. They don't want to be.
They don't want to grind through it. I love that, James.
And you can't be naive about this, because we look at 10,000 companies a year. We invest in 20, 25. So a tiny fraction, 0.2%. So we reject 99.8. Now, let's say we invest in 20 good ones. Of those, how many will be successful? Maybe 2.
2, yeah.
So 18, so only 2 of 10,000 will be successful. Now, of those 10,000, did we miss some of the others? Probably. So let's call it, there's a total of 50. We invested in 20, the best 20, but actually the total best was 50. So let's call it 4 or 5 successes out of 10,000. That's the numbers.
Yeah. The chance is slim. Yeah.
The chances are really, really slim. So if you're doing it, it's something you kind of have to be doing. The success of it can't matter into the equation. It's the doing of it that is the reward. That's what I say. We don't, the reason the Bay Area keeps winning is because we don't really care about the money. We care about the process.
Right. And if you have to do it, like I feel like at this point, like I don't see myself doing anything else. Like I just love what we're doing. Like it's just incredible to see people change their lives. But like, if with a gun in my head, I'm probably not going to be an employee again, right? But I think it needs to come not because you can't be employed, but it has to come from this passion that this is what you want to create. I love this, James. Yeah. So first of all, I love what you guys are doing. I love NFX. Huge fan. And again, like if you kind of look at what would be some advice that you wish somebody told you way back when they could have.
I wish someone had, okay. So the advice I'll give to your listeners is not self-promotional. It's actually what I think would be helpful to them, which is to go to nfx.com and read the content there. It's the second or third most popular VC website in the world after Andreessen Horowitz. And they've just got 600 people, and we've only got 9. So we're batting above our weight here. The articles there are really evergreen, thoughtful. Like it's like getting a business degree. Okay. It's like getting a startup entrepreneur business degree. I wish someone had told me about technology windows. So there's an article on the website called Technology Windows that is the best. And also you should read Venture Capital 3.0, which lays out what has happened over the last 50 years with venture capital and like where we are and how the whole ecosystem works with the startup industrial complex and all that stuff.
Interesting. Okay.
Just so that you understand the waters that you're swimming in as an entrepreneur. But the technology windows way of looking at the world is something I wish I had known 20 years ago. And they haven't taught this at HBS or at GSP, and hopefully they'll start soon. I'm trying to teach it on campus, on both those campuses now. But these technology windows open, and like I said, we were 80% lucky and 20% good. It's probably 90% timing and 10% effort. And everyone says, oh, it's sweat. It's not the idea. I'm like, actually, I disagree. It's actually the idea at the right time is kind of everything. And so what you'll see is people being really great venture capitalists for like a decade, and then they stop being a great venture. How is that? Well, because they were investing in a particular type of company when that technology window was open. And now that it's closed, they don't have a network in the new technology window and they can't get into the best deals. And so it's time for them to retire. So becoming a great venture capitalist, and you were saying I'm a horrible investor. I'm like, no, you're not a horrible investor. You just haven't picked a sector at the right time with the technology window. But once you start to be able to read these technology windows, you'll be able to place yourself in the flow of energy, and then you'll just get more lucky than not. And if you just stay in the game, you eventually get lucky. And then everyone says, wow, you're a genius. You're so smart. You're so talented. And as the great Sar Gur from CRV said, he said, the most important decision I ever made was just living in the Bay Area. Like everything
that
else.
Works.
He said, because when I came to the Bay Area in 2003, like all the energy was moving here. And I was just like floating on it and
moving with it. Yeah.
And then he led the seed round in DoorDash and, billions of returns. And now he's running the firm and he's just so humble. And he's like, I'm just here,
Incredible.
Great guy.
I love it. Technology windows. I'll definitely check it out. That's incredible.
Yeah.
James, thank you for everything you guys do. And just totally enjoyed this conversation. Can probably talk to you for hours. Thank you.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
More episodes that you're going to love are right around the corner. So definitely make sure to click the like button and subscribe to our channel. Also, who in your life should see this today? Do share this with them. This will inspire and help those you care about and helps us continue to bring amazing guests. And I will see you there.